Well, military appeal court, the government of Tunisia has sentenced a leading opponent of President Kais Saied, Sefeddin Mahfouz, to 1 year in prison for insulting a judge. The government also banned him from practicing law for 5 years. Mr. Mahfouz is the head of Karama Party, which is allied to the Islamist Edna Party. Mr. Mahfouz's lawyer called the verdict a farce. He said the president had created a judiciary that he manipulates and uses to oppress his opponents. Earlier this month, President Kais Saied sacked dozens of judges. He accused them of supporting Islamists. Critics like Mr. Mahfouz consider the president's action as another move to establish a one-man rule in Tunisia. A new survey of young people in Africa aged 18 to 24 showed that 52% are considering emigrating in the next few years. The African Youth Survey 2022, carried out in 15 countries by the South African Ichikowi's Family Foundation, showed that young Africans are pessimistic about the continent's future. In the survey, 95% of young people in Nigeria said that things were going badly for the nation. They blamed lack of job opportunities and insecurity as their main reasons. In Ghana, however, the statistics showed greater optimism about the trajectory of the nation. In Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari has congratulated the winner of Saturday's Ekiti governorship election and flag bearer of the ruling All Progressive Congress (APC), Biodun Oyebanji, for his victory. The president applauded him for his contributions to the development of the state and the party. This came in a statement issued by Buhari's special advisor on media and publicity, Femi Adesina. Early on Sunday, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) declared Mr. Biodun Oyebanji as the winner of Saturday's election. Oyebanji pulled 187,000 votes to defeat the candidates of the Social Democratic Party (SDP), Mr. Segun Oni, who scored 82,211 votes, while the candidates of the People's Democratic Party (PDP), Mr. Bisi Kolawole, scored 67,457 votes. In his reaction to the election, Mr. Moses Jolayemi, the state spokesperson of the Social Democratic Party, accused the APC of engaging in vote buying. He also accused security agencies of compromising during the election. He vowed that SDP would not concede defeat and would take necessary steps to seek justice. I am Chido Onuma. It's 8:30 a.m. in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
I'm Rudolph Okonkwo. It is 11:30 a.m. in New York.
It is 4:30 p.m. in Nigeria.
It is 4:30 p.m. in Tunisia. Wherever in the world you are joining us, welcome to another edition of 90 Minutes Africa. Last year, Uganda had its presidential election. If Idi Amin Dada had conducted that election in the 1970s, it would have been different from what took place in the East African country in 2021. Our guest this week recently returned from Kampala, the capital of Uganda, where she interviewed President Yoweri Museveni. As Kenya prepares for its election in August and Nigeria prepares for elections in February of 2023, Adesewa Josh joins us to discuss Africa from the perspective of journalists who cover the continent. Adesewa is a former host of Channels TV in Nigeria. She now hosts Africa Matters for Turkish-based TRT World. Welcome to the show, Adesewa Josh. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Good to have you. Thank you.
So let's start from what happened yesterday. There was an election in Ekiti, and I'm guessing that I'm not sure whether foreign correspondents from the international media they were in Ekiti to cover that election. I wanted to know, based on your experience, if an election like that is a test of what will happen in February, if foreign correspondents were not there, how would they cover the election in February? Would they just fly in when the election comes, and how would they be able to understand the structure of the country in a deep way?
I think you're basically asking me how international journalism works.
Yes, yes.
Well, think of it this way. International news platforms, or they're global, okay? So what happens in local news in every country really, and if those local stories don't have any form of international relevance to their own audience, they tend to ignore it. So you know how they say news is local first, before it is international. So what they do is they look for stories that resonate, that has a global relevance. So like the election of a new president of a country is of global relevance. If two local politicians are, struggling among one another, and that's really not where they want to put their energy until it becomes like a national news. So, for example, those two local politicians, God forbid, kill each other and indict the president of the country, and then the story goes on and on. Then they feel like it is big enough for their audience to know. So that's how international journalism works. It has to resonate with their global audience. So a local election, why would a local election make, say, be on a CNN, for example, or on a TRT World?
Mm.
You have to think about, that's how executive producers think. Why would
Yes.
our audience want to know about this?
That's
So
that's
the danger in that is, when a foreign correspondent comes in, they have to then like go through the backlog of information that they have missed as a build up to a national election. And sometimes if that correspondent hasn't been following the story, that's where the nuances are lost. Okay?
yeah.
This is what we're talking about. So except you really know the region, or you are from the region, or you're a journalist who's been following the story, you are going to miss a lot of nuances, when all of a sudden you fly into the country and you're reporting something as big as a national election.
Yes, that's why when we talk about coverage of Africa, Africans complain, especially when these people coming in to cover Africa, they are foreigners. Africans complain about the quality of the coverage. Let's show our viewers where you are covering stories across Africa, and then we continue the conversation.
For Nigerians living on less than $1 a day, second-hand clothing stores are where to shop for affordable outfits. But these days, many people are staying away.
So people are no longer buying because of what they believe, that when you buy second-hand clothing, that you contact the disease.
Vendors say customers are scared because used clothes are sourced from the US and other COVID-19 hotspots in Europe and Asia. Scientists say the disease is more likely to spread through respiratory droplets than by touching objects and surfaces.
There isn't much scientific evidence that second-hand clothes will be transmitting it. I think what's more of a concern is how people get together and make the social marketplace crowded when they are buying the second-hand clothes.
It's unlikely the demand for used clothes will dry up altogether, but health experts agree the pandemic will change how the business is done.
What we need to do now is to make sure that as these items are getting imported, even at the customs or at this point of entry, you institute barriers. There are disinfectants, we have disinfecting sprays, disinfecting solutions, scans, checks. So what we need to do is to make practical protocols, easy guidelines that people can easily follow.
Vendors know.
Every week, Africa Matters will bring you the untold, underreported stories from across the continent. Bringing the issues that matter to Africans to the world.
On Africa Matters, we take you on a journey through the eyes of the people at the heart of every story.
We'll talk to those who know best.
We are more connected than we thought, and that we are more vulnerable than we thought.
We'll help you understand Africa better and why it matters. Africa Matters on TRT World.
All right. That was you and going to places and reporting and covering Africa. So let's start with your perception of Africa and based on your experience in the last few years. Where do you think Africa is? Is Africa a continent on the rise, or is it a continent that is static?
I don't think it's fair to say that Africa is static. Even if we want to be, it's impossible. It's a global community. We are an active member of the global community. Somehow, even if we don't want to move, as the world is growing and moving, we're being dragged along. So you're either being dragged or you're walking or you're moving. Either way, you're moving. Okay. So I wouldn't say it is static, but are we going at our own pace on our own terms? Is what the question is.
Are we?
Perhaps at our own pace, but I wouldn't say on our own terms.
So here, what would you then say are the significant changes? Perhaps you could preface your response with how much time you spent covering the continent as a journalist. Give us some background, and then what significant strides in the 10 years or 5 years or so that you've covered the continent.
More than 10, actually.
Wow.
Can't believe it's been more than 10. Yes, I'm very lucky, I would say, because my career started in Nigeria, and I'm so lucky I've done this job across 3 continents, which means I've done it on our continent, I've done it in the US for international media. Now I'm somewhere in Europe. Actually, I'm sandwiched somewhere between Europe and Asia, and I'm also doing it for another international media. And my experience across borders has been different. When I was in Nigeria, I was speaking to other Africans. So that's one thing we know how to do well. We have great journalists in Africa who can tell our stories well. And that's very important because at the end of the day, even international journalists rely on the knowledge of these local journalists. Okay? But then I realized that international platforms are very powerful in shaping the perceptions of this perception of the African continent to the rest of the world, to the international community. So where do people get stories about Africa from? Not from African media. They get it from Western media. And what that taught me is that we need African journalists who are very bright, who know what they're doing, planted across those international newsrooms, who can take charge of our narratives. Because in their absence, there are other people who have appointed themselves custodians of our narratives. And as you can tell, we've said it over and over, that we're not the raconteurs of our own stories. And until that changes, the perception of the continent is, quote unquote, going to be static. Now, just addressing the question of are we moving forward and blah, blah, blah. You see, Africa has the youngest population of all the continents in the world. And what I have seen young people do with the technology that is driving change across the world, with the level of literacy that is actually rising significantly on the continent, in some places rather slow and disappointing. But the little space that young people are occupying across the continent is powerful. Take, for example, the last 10 years, the revolutions that we've had across Africa was driven by young people using their telephones on Twitter. And that's why when Twitter was, going to be bought over and certain changes were going to come, you saw that young people in Africa were like, oh, the only platform available to us to drive the change the way we want it is about to be what? Commercialized. These are some of the things that are changing. And if it stays consistent and steady, we are going to see a concerted effort. We're going to see that effort round up more, and the changes that we're asking for will appear as if it happened suddenly, but I think there's a huge build-up right now.
Okay. Sorry, Rudolph, before you step in, I just want to ask, Africa is not a country, and mostly in Europe and America, the sense you get is that it's seen as one. And then people like you who have the responsibility to report it as a continent. From your own experience, what are the specific nuances, even though it's a continent dominated mainly by blacks, in the majority, at least in sub-Saharan Africa? Are there any peculiarities? Are there any similarities? Are there the differences or peculiar things that differentiates Africans in your reportage to
Okay.
give us a clearer understanding of the continent?
Okay. With all due respect, in the 21st century, my biggest frustration in international newsrooms is when I get the indirect nuance, energy, whatever you want to call it, vibe that Africa is a country. It just sends my brain spinning. So, for example, I want to go on a deployment and I ask to hire a stringer. And they look at you and go, that's not why we hired you. If we're sending a white boy now, we believe that it's justified to give them money to hire a stringer. And I'm thinking, you are thinking from the perspective that Africa is a country. Even in my Nigeria, when I go to the north, I have to work with a stringer who is Hausa. We are a continent of tens of thousands of ethnicities and languages. And somehow, by the machinations of the colonialists, they have bundled us together. Now we're working with it. Please educate yourself. Africa is a country of 53. In fact, last time I checked, it's 55. So now we have some islands. This is how I work with it. And I think it's a huge burden even for me. When people say, oh, she covers Africa. Every day I bury my head and I'm like, oh my God. What you're saying is you cover over 40 countries with all kinds of nuances and you have to position it well. It's a huge burden on my shoulder, but you know what saves me? I never pretend to know everything. I'm always learning. I'm always reading. And I'm always asking questions. West and East. West Africa kind of has the culture there is sort of the same because of the history that they have, and because they also share, some of them share similar colonial masters.
Oh, there is a great language difference. Sorry to cut you.
Yes, even that
I mean, Arabic, French, English, Portuguese.
Exactly. Even that, I still can't bundle the whole of West together. You see what I mean? And then there is the East Africa. East Africa is slightly homogeneous in their culture. And then you have South Africa. And then you have Central Africa. You see what I mean? I mean, my experience in Somalia was different than my experience in Mauritania. My experience in Uganda was different from my experience in Cameroon. You see what I mean? So even when I go reporting, I go like a baby, ready to learn. I never go approaching the continent as if I know everything. Now imagine when my brothers, my sisters come to report and I'm thinking, where Makachukunde, where is this from? What? Why? The nuances have just been taken through one small needle eye. And I'm thinking, as Chimamanda said, the danger of one story.
A single story.
Of a single story. You can't do that. You go there with an open mind and listen to the people. With my show, and you can tell, because I was very involved in the production of that of the promo. We said through the eyes of the people, at the heart of every story. I go there like a newborn baby, or like a teenager, or like a child, there to learn. That's how to report Africa. So it's hard. So every day is my learning day. Every day I put on. Of course, I read. Also, Google is not helping, but I guess, we need more content creators from the continent to position. When you go on Google and you search about Africa, if that's the only place you get your story from, you are doomed to not learn anything about this country. When you meet an African, don't come with premeditated ideas of what you think the continent is. Listen to the people. I still do it. Most of us do it amongst ourselves. That's how we can learn. and counter the existing narratives.
All right. Let me play a video of you interviewing Museveni, the president of Uganda, and you tell us how you prepared for that, being that we know his reputation, how he deals with the media and everything. So let me play that for our viewers.
Is Uganda heading towards hereditary rule?
I must have been preparing him to become president.
Kyagulanyi Ssentamu was your main political challenger in the last election. Does he remind you of your younger self?
He reminds me of our young opponents and enemies. He thinks instead of worshiping God, he's worshiping United States.
Would you say that this is the Uganda of your dreams?
Not yet, but partially. Of course, we have been running because there was unfinished business.
All right, for something like this, Museveni, how do you prepare to interview him, and what were the surprises?
Museveni. So for someone that you've always wanted to interview, and I've watched him, this is a guy who has spent 3 decades or so being president of the same country, and then even before then, somehow running the country from behind, right? Mm-hmm. So he understands mostly international media. He knows the questions, and he, over time, has built a defensive mechanism to deflect or to even attack you. When I was preparing, I watched all his interviews with CNN, with Al Jazeera, and I saw a pattern of deflection and defense. And it's because the questions sounded the same. They were, according to him, accusatory. They were like foregone conclusions. They were Western in their nature. And it was like, he was just being interrogated to answer these questions. So I decided, well, I was going to take a different approach. I was going to talk to him and just have a conversation, try to get into his head, to try to understand why he is the way he is. And I kind of have a track record in terms of the way I approach high-profile interviews. It was the same experience with Adama Barrow of the Gambia. We had finished during the interview, and for the first time to the media, he admitted to me that everything he said on the campaign trail, there's no way he can fulfill it. I was like, Mr. President, what do you mean? The reason why the Gambians voted for you is because they didn't want a Jammeh situation again. And you told them that when you get there, 3 years, you will set the country straight and get off. It was one of the reasons why they voted for you. And he said, well, when you're on the campaign trail, you say anything you want as a politician. When you get there, you find out what the real job is. I said, Mr. President. And when he said that, after the interview, he came back to me and said, I think I'm going to have to get ready with my lawyer with you. I said, I did not force you to say anything, sir. You said what was actually in your mind. And did you know that this interview trended in the Gambia? So civil society caught that part of the interview and started using it to slam him, asked him to step down after 1 year. The rest is history. He explained himself, blah, blah, blah. When I went to Uganda, to Kampala, I went to the State House. Different people called me aside and said they wanted to see my questions. I was like, you have to put a bullet through me first. You cannot see my questions. And, of course, there are people, the president, they have all these people that the president necessarily doesn't even have to know about them. They believe they're doing their jobs, right? So they were all calling me aside and trying to admonish me to not go hard on the president. As a matter of fact, there's no other way to put it. And I said, the more you do this, as a journalist, the more you put me on the edge. And sort of what you're telling me is that you have something to hide. Allow me to do my job, okay? And the president walks into his garden. We sat down. Of course, if you see the sitting arrangement is weird because the old man was afraid of COVID-19.
COVID. So you were far away.
It was a very, very hectic interview. Like we kept changing position. They really wanted to protect him to make. I was like, okay. And then he comes in and says, looked at me, thought out, and he said, where are you from? Blah, 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 blah. And he said, and I said to him, sir, I just want to have a conversation. He said he doesn't even care. If that he has survived all kinds of interviews, interrogations, accusations. When he said that, we busted out laughing. And I said, I just want to have a conversation with you. This is between you and I. So forget the cameras. I need to get into your head, with all due respect, sir, and hear what you have to say. And even though I had all of my questions, I didn't shy away from all of my questions. While I was asking those difficult questions of, are you preparing your son to take over from you? Is this a hereditary rule? I can see seeds dragging in the garden. Like, where did they get this one from? Asking our principal, just anyhow, just talking anyhow.
Sorry, sorry to cut you. This is quite interesting. So, hearing all of this, I would like to know whose idea was this interview?
It's funny. I mean, every day I wake up wanting to interview one crazy leader or the other. So ideally, I was chasing, but they'd been watching the show, and I want to believe that they felt, okay, this is a platform where they're reasonable people. So they reached out to me and said, we would, yes. And I was like, oh. So I called my team. I said, guess who reached out and wants to talk to Adesewa Josh? I said, I wonder what they want to say itself, but let's see. And they said, oh, really? Like, what's going on? I said, I don't care what's going on. I want to speak to Museveni and let's make it happen. And the rest is history. So it was sort of, you get to a point, and he's not getting younger, where you feel like the world still doesn't get me. And is there a platform where I can just say what's on my mind? I walked away from that interview kind of feeling like, okay, he said it in the interview. He said, I feel a sense of unfinished business. The Museveni, and I'm not speaking in favor of him or anything, Museveni is a real Pan-Africanist, just very intolerant of dissent. Just like Muammar Gaddafi. If Uganda is not an easy country. See the positioning of that country geographically. See all the countries it is surrounded by. You need a very strong leadership in an area like that, but not the type that then suppresses voices. And I asked him about Changulani. I said, Bobby Wine, doesn't Bobby Wine remind you of yourself when you were younger? Why is it so hard to accommodate him? These were questions we had to talk about. And I do not agree with everything. I asked him about his human rights record, suppressing the media, etc. So this way, I mean, the podcast, the whole thing, uncut, undiluted, is going to be up on my podcast, on my website very soon. But I walked away from the interview getting to know this man better, which also explains why a lot of founding fathers, a lot of presidents who fought hard for their country as soon as, after independence, felt the need to see something through. The only person who showed that it could be done another way was Nelson Mandela. And I always kind of put that notion into my interviews when I'm talking to these people. You don't have to be there. Your real success is after you've done what you can, you move away and see the younger generation take on. We will die someday. Why hang on to it by all means necessary? So it was one of my, I enjoyed the interview a lot. And I hope to do more of that. Actually, the next person I want to interview is Paul Kagame. So
yeah, I wanted to go there now because Kagame, but generally, let's look at this. What do you think is the greatest threat facing Africa? You've talked to leaders, you've talked to ordinary people on the street. What you are based on your assessments, what is the greatest threat facing Africa?
Sorry, maybe before we get to that, I think that's a more general question which should take most part of the conversation, but still on the Museveni thing. Mm-hmm. First, I would like to know what your takeaway was in terms of how, first of all, you then his handlers and the president himself. Has there been any pushback from the interview? One, Then two, here is a man who is 77, almost 80. He came to power in 1986. For some of us who were, growing up in Nigeria those days, following his resistance movement, almost 40 years in power. What's your own general assessment about his justification for remaining in power, and do you think it's something that is valid?
Museveni is the third longest serving president in Africa. He justifies it by his sense of unfinished business, but also that the people keep voting for him, even though the opposition says that the elections are always largely never credible. Okay, so I mean, I asked him if he was going to run again. He said that's up to Ugandans to decide, but that he personally feels a sense of unfinished business. So if he sees them voting for him as an endorsement to keep on doing it, but then the argument is always, but the electoral process, the election is usually not credible. So as I mentioned earlier, it's for him, it's an honor to keep serving his country, but people who look closely, and with all of the things that he's done, the adjustment of the constitution, the removal of age limits, all the tweaks, different things, that the steps that's been taken in the past to accommodate this dream and this vision and this idea of let me keep running and finish what I've started, it kind of somehow it makes that dream of him, it puts it into question, because it's like, I want to be there by all means necessary, and that is undemocratic, right? So that's the biggest challenge. And I mean, like I said earlier, Museveni has great ideas. There was a time he was the darling of the West. Remember when he first started the West? I mean, look, if you see the New York Times article, they were so happy that Idi Amin was gone, because they saw Idi Amin as the conduit for Islam and warming up to the Russians. So the West had their own interest to protect, and any African leader shortly after our independence in the 60s and late 50s, anyone who did align with whatever they were trying to do between them was seen as the enemy. And although Idi Amin was a bad boy, and then when Museveni came, Museveni was doing everything right until he started stepping on their toes, and all of a sudden he became a bad boy. If you look at what he's done in the last 20 years, yes, it's not in tandem with democratic values. So you question his ambition and the ways that he has gone about it. So it's a very difficult one to judge, to be honest with you. Mugabe did it till he died, so I hope that's not going to be Uganda's problem.
So yeah, that's very nice. I wonder in Uganda if the ghost of Idi Amin is still there. Do people feel that Museveni saved them from the crisis that other African countries are facing? Because you can say that he so far he's been able to have the country together, but without the freedom, without the rights, which you can say a modernized version of it is what's happening in Rwanda, where you have Paul Kagame, and the question is always, how long will they stay? If you are the only one that can keep the country together, that can eventually, you're not going to be there, and what happens after that?
Crumbles, I guess. Well, we don't know. Look, I always say that Africa's democracy will take the shape of the country's history and its unique experiences. I think the way democracy has been defined, which is a word coined by the West and the whole symbolism and all, I think we will tailor our experiences of democracy to our unique, experiences. And I hope I'm using the right words. So it won't be like, you took a dress from someone else and just you put it on. You're just this, you're just that. And if at the end of the day, the dividends of the system, it mirrors what democracy is supposed to deliver, it then makes it hard for the world to criticize you, which is what is going on in Rwanda. Look at the standard of living in Rwanda. It is still considered today. The last time I checked out, it is the second country where, with the highest FDI, and the growth rate is like the second in Africa, if not the first now, where everyone wants to go and do business because security, you dare not mess around because Uncle Kagame does not take those things lightly. So if the country is secure, whatever means or ways that the government has used to arrive at that was one thing they had to figure out. And somehow, when they explain the process to the rest of the world, it's like, oh my God, why did you do that? The country is at peace. Poverty is at a certain whatever level, and somehow the people can't even complain out loud because they're
Yes.
sending children to school, they're doing all of that. So sometimes it gets me wondering, what will it take? With the history of tribalism and ethnicity and cantankerous relationships and the divide and rule that we have had to live with after these people left us, I don't think it would be easy to build our systems purely based on the democracy that they defined. Let's face it. Okay, so Paul Kagame is someone, you like him, you hate him, but he's delivering for his people better than the people who are doing word for word democracy in some places. China, we're blaming China. I remember, the ideology of the world now is West versus God knows now whether it's China. And there was a time like 10 years ago, Western media was hammering on China. You're very repressive, da 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 da. And then I remember listening to a commentator, a Chinese commentator, and say, are we delivering for our people? Have we moved this country from the depth of poverty in just less than 20 years to the point where we are? We still have a lot of work to do. Have we done that? Are we delivering whatever the system you're calling us is? Are we delivering almost the same thing as your democracy? Please let the end justify the means for us. And it was hard to keep hammering on that system. So I think it is unfair I don't think one system is going to serve every purpose and every society. I am a personal believer that may or may not happen. I think we're all going to have to tweak the realities of our societies. We can adopt this and adopt that and adopt that. But tailoring is the word. And every leader must begin to find ways while still obeying, human rights rules. And the society has to be strong to hold those in power responsible, because absolute power is what corrupts absolutely. And that's what democracy is trying to adjust. Divestment of power, going from one family, one monarchy is the one that controls everything, to okay, let's distribute this power to everybody. So you take 0.1 across the population, we'll give each of you votes, and then we'll come together and find one. So like I said, it's kind of tricky, but it's like every day you gotta work towards it.
All right. That's very nice. We're going to eventually get our viewers to join us. And
sorry, I want to quickly, because you asked me an interesting question. You said, "What is the greatest threat?"
Yeah, first in Africa.
And while I was thinking this, it was Museveni who articulated it very well. In fact, I think I used that sentence in my new promo for the show. He said, "Tribalism and ethnicity is what is killing us."
And so, what is his solution? Has he solved it in Uganda?
No, he hasn't solved it, but he's aware of it. And I think for him, he said, he has all this agenda. Told his PA to give it to me to read. It was so funny. He said, he wants to help solve the problem of tribalism and ethnicity, and that as long if we continue to buy from one another, irrespective of ethnicity and tribalism, and whether you're from Agbo or from Yanopaja, as long as you have what I need, we work together, we do it based on just the basic principles of respect, that our societies will grow, and then somehow the lines of ethnicity and tribalism will blur out. And that for him, he's trying to do that in Uganda. Honestly speaking.
Now that's interesting because in Rwanda, they actually accomplished that on paper. So, for instance, nobody's Hutu, nobody's Tutsi. You're not allowed to define yourself as Hutu and Tutsi. So they think that will solve the problem of the genocide that happened in '94. But there's no guarantee that if they become free, if Kagame is not there and they become free, that will be
continue.
That people will not go back to knowing themselves as Tutsi. And in other parts of Africa, what we're seeing is a movement for people identifying their ethnic groups and even some demanding to have a separate nation. We have that in Nigeria. We have some elements in Kenya who are basically demanding the same thing, and other African countries. So when you look at Africa that way, do you think, what direction do you think things are going?
Well, again, I'll go back to what you said about Rwanda and the whole Hutu thing. Look, for now, the person who is there, and I don't want to, the person who is there, he's delivering for, he's the president of Rwanda. Okay?
Yeah.
They don't say he's a whatever president. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the people getting rich and sending their kids to school are from both ethnicities, except somebody wants to just wants to destabilize the country and starts the campaign of to try and disintegrate that. As long as people are successful, Rudolph, as long as people are enjoying the basics of life, I think those things become secondary, because we need something to blame. We need common cause. And that's what tribalism and ethnicity is for. You see, when we have one umbrella and somehow the dividends is going across everyone, I have not heard, not in recent time, that one part of Rwanda is getting more developed than the other, except for, you always have urban and rural areas. Okay? It's like somehow there is the even distribution of whatever successes that Rwanda has garnered since 1994. Okay. And if people are, what we're hearing, of course, is, there's a suppression of ideas of, even if you don't like the president, you cannot say it out loud, etc., etc. But people who are, traveling through the country, you see that, there's a semblance of kind of everybody is moving up somehow. Okay. So, like I said, if there is even distribution of wealth, regardless of who you are, where you're from, every other thing becomes secondary, tribalism, ethnicity become. But when there is none, people find common cause. What can we attack? It's because we're Igbo. It's because I'm a Hutu. And then when you look also in what do you call it? When you look in Ethiopia, it's because we are Tigrayans. So that's our biggest problem. And Museveni was right about that.
Thank you very much, Adesewa. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we have just about 45 minutes. We still need to bring in the audience. So maybe if you keep your responses
let's
brief,
just okay.
Perhaps we
I
can
like this, but
yeah, we can take as many questions as possible. So
all right.
So you mentioned China and the successes and what the Chinese state has done for its people. How is that reflected? You find a lot of, in your coverage of the continent, you find a lot of, you see a lot of countries in Africa heading towards China. What's your experience in terms of its impact? But before you answer that, quickly tell us the challenges you faced covering the continent. What are your fears? What are your concerns? What are the inconveniences you've had to suffer?
Oh, hard.
No, that the consequences you've suffered, like you've had to deal
Oh,
with.
you may continue to suffer.
Oh, okay, well,
Oh, I'm suffering. It does, like, you gotta love this job to keep, because sometimes I'm thinking, like, if you do something
I know
else.
it's a tough place. We are all journalists and have had to. So, for example, you're trying to travel, say, from Senegal or Nigeria to Liberia, and you may need to go to Europe first to connect a flight to come to Liberia or Sierra Leone. I've had that terrible experience, but let's hear from you.
Okay, so there's just one I'm gonna highlight for because of time. One of the reasons why other people tell our stories is because even within our own continent, we cannot move around freely. A British passport and an American passport will go fairly easy across the continent. Me where we say now me inside continent. It's very embarrassing. And I'll tell you a personal story. I was deployed. I was supposed to cover Mugabe's burial, and I had some other stories to also do. And when I was planning, I mean, a lot of things went wrong. I took some of the blame, but the bottom line is I got to the airport and I think some stuff had changed about West African passports. And I got to the airport and I was turned back. My cameraman with a Turkish passport was allowed in. Let that sink. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was just, I think I cried. I cried. Then I said, this is the last time this is ever going to happen to me. Because you see, when you go to J school or when you're planning to become an international journalist, because it's not a path well traveled, you don't have anything to tell you beyond your talent. Your passport matters. See, that's a story for another day. It's not for this show. Secondly, what was the second question? So for me, that's my biggest challenge because access matters. And I remember telling a friend who has a lot of good connections in the AU, I said for international journalists, who are trying to position our stories on these platforms that are so powerful that when they say about Africa, is what the whole world believe on before they start finding the real truth. Let's find a way to position them. Look, our industry is shrinking in terms of funds. No international newsroom wants to invest in anyone that will give them issues. If a story breaks and you're not the one who can just get up and go, they substitute you. They find somebody else who can tell it, and usually who would that be? British or American passport. So you are useless to your continent. I'm not understanding. That is my biggest challenge. Maybe not anymore. But like I said, the story is for another day. What was the second question you asked me?
China, the influence of China in Africa.
Look, China, look, our leaders need to start coming to the table like businessmen. All these ones that they're saying that, oh, they need to, I hear some people say, oh, we need to push these people away. It's too late. We're in a global world. We're always going to keep having these people coming and keep taking. This is a continent that if they take from yesterday till tomorrow, they will still have more to take. The only thing is that we need to come to the table and negotiate like business people with the interest of our people at hand. No other country comes near the depth and breadth of China's engagement in Africa. It is Africa's biggest trading partner, bilateral creditor, and a crucial source of infrastructure development. Infrastructure investment. Okay? Everywhere you go, now it's China. In fact, when I start having kids, I'm going to make sure that they learn Mandarin. Because after English, I'm telling you, my brother, because after English, give it 10, 15 years, it's Mandarin. When these people are selling us and you don't even understand what they're saying anymore, so every government will not have to start embedding their own people that can speak Mandarin, because then that will be like Pepe.
Wait. Are you? So you're saying that it's a second scramble for Africa, that China is basically taking over? Is that what is going on?
That is a long time ago. That is so. I think when it didn't. So the question is, did it just start? Are you joking me? Are you joking me? This thing has started since.
So, but how can Africa resist? How can Africa survive?
I don't think it is fair to call it scramble, because they didn't come with guns to our heads. They came with deals. Hence my opening statement. DRC today, I keep saying it. Apple, All this, what they want to do renewable energy. They can't do it without a country like DRC. That North Kivu province, where hell is breaking loose, is where all the cobalt, that's where it is. Okay? China is active there. All right? They can't do, the world actually literally cannot do without us. So how do we go to these negotiations? See, if DRC says we want to suffer for just 10 years, we're not selling anything to anybody. Come back in 10 years. Of course, they will blacklist you, they will sanction you, whatever it is they will do, just to test your power. Because if you don't know how powerful you are, how are you going to use your power? So I think it is bad negotiation, terrible understanding of how important. Nobody is doing you a favor, Africa. So I think it is unfair to call it a scramble. I don't think it is a scramble, because this time around, they didn't come with bullets and pellets to come and shoot it in our head. They came with bad deals that we agreed to, that those leaders took care of their families and a couple other, maybe 2 years, and then it falls apart. Or how do you explain why DRC is still very poor with all of those things that they have? Bad negotiation.
So let me connect it to something else going on across Africa, which is the Islamic fundamentalist fight. They are operating in West Africa, East Africa, North Africa, South Africa. So 50 years from now, how do you expect which one will win? Is it the fundamentalist, or is the China's invasion of Africa, if you want to call it that? Is that what is going to triumph? What will Africa look like 50 years from now?
It is whatever I want it to look like, because I'm really avoiding answering that religion question. Because after all, there is freedom of worship.
Yeah, but it's not worship. The Al-Shabaab or the Boko Haram, they are not. It's not about freedom of worship. It's about fighting and destroying societies.
It's about poverty.
Okay, that's the.
Well, so there's a parallel we can draw in the sense of what you talked about China. So you have this continent that has a triple heritage of Christianity, Islam, and traditional religion. Just as you have this continent that has a heritage of natural resources, and people come from outside and make use of these resources, and we don't get anything in return. Just the same way that a lot of the influence or the crisis we see with religion in Africa is actually from outside, whether it's the influence of what's happening in Iraq or Iran or Afghanistan and so on, now coming to play on the continent. Is it that we as a people, or the leaders on the continent, are the challenge? Where did we go wrong in terms of the kind of impact, whether it's economic, whether it's political, whether it's religious, that we've turned the continent into a slaughter slab, or the theater of operation in all of this, and it's not benefiting us in any way?
So you want to know what role religion plays in our dysfunction, in our ability to just pull things together? Is that what you're asking me? Because if that's what you're asking me, from like time immemorial, religion has always been used, I should say. I'm not saying it exists that way, but religion has been used to organize society or disorganize it. Religion is a tool, and how it is being used, or how it is being allowed to be used, is largely based on leadership, to be honest with you. Every religion hasn't set out to be divisive in the fundamental sense of it. It's supposed to be peaceful. People are supposed to find peace in their soul, worship their God, whatever it is. I think part of the problem is trying to elevate one religion higher than the other. I'm a Christian, and I think part of my journey as a Christian is to stop looking down on any other religion, with all sense of modesty. Like I said, I have lived across 3 continents, and one of the ways I've been able to live with my sanity intact is to believe in what I believe and let people be. And if you come ask me, uh, what's what's up? You know, some working for you, some work for you, bro. Like, what's going on? And I can be like, yeah, you know, I got something that's worked for me, and you might want to close your eyes and pray. So that principle of freedom of worship, if it exists across our continent, but not the kind that is disruptive, that demands that one part of the world should be worshiping their own god because their own god is better. I mean, I find it very annoying, personally, and I think good leadership anywhere would not let religion be used as a divisive tool. Historically, leaders, politicians have used religion to organize society, to tell them God sent them. Everybody, wow, the person God sent. Let us follow him. Gegeo, you know, without even asking a lot of questions. Religion has a way, has a this powerful influence of not making people question logic.
I think you touched on an important issue, which is leadership. Then that takes us to the question of the 3 or 4 big players in Africa in terms of countries, both economy and population. So you can talk about Egypt, you can talk about Nigeria, you can talk about South Africa. There is a sense in which if the leaders of these powerhouses, so to say, get their acts together, perhaps things can be different. Do you has it crossed your mind in terms of your assessment of these 3 big players in Africa and what they have to offer the continent in terms of direction and ensuring there is a level of cohesiveness and progress?
I mean, there's no doubt that these 3 countries shoulder a lot of responsibilities, not just for themselves and their people, but also like as a glowing example for the rest of the continent. Leadership, everything rises and falls on leadership. We've said it before. We keep saying it over and over again. Um, but you know, a friend of mine, like 10 years ago, we were talking about how leadership in India is also not great. But somehow there was a powerful middle class, and there still is. And what they did was they leveraged good education, and the middle base became so powerful that they didn't even care what the ruling elites were doing. You know, there was a time, and I think it still exists, that a lot of people would go to India to go and their healthcare was so good, and still is very good. So there are countries that, when you look at the top, a big mess. But then when you look at the middle, they have a powerful middle class that is well educated, they're good with business, and they just kept doing their thing. And I think after a while, the system will correct itself because the number of people who are now more educated, more advanced, can make good decisions, understand how democracy works, will then shift those crazy elites who don't want anything good for their, or who don't even have an idea or shouldn't be there in the first place, gets them away. I think that's what one of the good things about democracy. It's a system that, if it is well done, it self corrects, because democracy functions on the assumption that the people, the majority of the people, can reason well, they are literate, and they can choose, they can make informed decisions. That's why democracy is dangerous for societies that are not well educated. It is a dangerous thing. I don't think it should be practiced. But again, that is a conversation for another day. Because that's what that is it. If you say democracy is a yeah, it needs politics, which is a game of numbers. So, and then it needs a society that can think, not from the belly, but well educated and all. What is the literacy rates of Africa compared to the rest of the world? And then you dump a system that requires people to choose not based on hunger or whatever, but you choose and say, this leader is knows fiscal whatever balance, how to balance the sheets, and how to create jobs for the people. Like, people are not thinking that way. So I mean, how do you do that? But again, I'm veering off course. Back to religion. Leadership is everything. And leadership also, to be honest with you, if if we're still talking about democracy and how it affects leadership, in a place where the majority leadership will always reflect the majority of the population. In Africa, if you the kind of leaders we choose is a reflection of the people who voted for them. You and I were in the we are in the minority in our various countries. So we can never choose somebody like us. The majority of the people choose the kind of leaders you have seen everywhere that you don't agree with. Leaders are a reflection of the society. I may have jammed my head in a way or two, but all I'm saying is where democracy is functioning, leadership is a reflection of the society because it writes on politics, and politics is a game of numbers, and the number of people who vote will choose somebody like them. Etc. Leadership is everything. Good leadership, you won't want bad eggish religion, if there's anything like that, to spoil the progress that you're trying to plant in your country.
All right, we are going to take a break. When we come back, we talk about your journey in journalism. I want to know how you did it. For young people who are watching, who might want to be international journalists like you, they want to know how you were able to accomplish this and other advice they might get from you. So let's take a break and then we'll come back.
Tens of millions of people in Africa, Twitter is more than just an app. It's also an essential tool for free speech. Over the past decade, the social media platform has become a powerful rallying tool for street protests and a virtual public square where authoritarian governments are held accountable. Let's take a look at some African countries where Twitter has played a critical role in driving social change. Twitter and other social media platforms have become important tools for social justice, despite all these limitations, in many African countries, and as such a potent threat to authoritarian regimes. Will this...
You cannot kill the power of a good story. And I might not have a gun, but my pen has equal powers. My name is Adesewa Josh, and I am from Nigeria. I have been a journalist now for nearly a decade.
Okay, that was like 2 years ago.
There is nothing more powerful than the power of a good story.
All right. So, I know that was, but I wanted
that was a while ago, mate.
There was a chance, people may not know this, that you will have ended up as a Nollywood actress.
Oh my God.
No, I just found that out, that you were a child, you were a child actor, you did so many things, stage, you were on stage. And so how did you end up as a journalist, and what is the experience like for young people who are watching, who may want to be like you?
Okay, you're asking me to summarize my memoir.
Yeah. Summarize.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in the university, I studied science, laboratory technology. So I was a science student, basically. Back in secondary school, I was very artistic, doing French club, drama club, all these things, but I had good results. And once your result is very good, your result determines what class you go to. So they put me in science class. I was like, okay, fine. I thrived. And, so my life has always been like, it's a combination of a lot of experiences. But then knowing that this is something that comes more naturally to me, I started doing television, presenting. I did everything artistic that came my way. After graduation from university, I decided I wanted to figure out what I really wanted to do, because I didn't see myself wearing a lab coat and titrating acid and base. It just wasn't me. I knew it, and I'm the kind of person that cannot pretend to like anything. It's good and bad. So I started doing, going for auditions. I took acting script. I was on Tinsel. Don't tell anybody.
Nobody's watching.
But nobody's watching. As Waka Pass, I did Waka Pass for a while. I was like, if people don't give me a very good script, I'm going to quit this Waka Pass. I was a backup singer for Mama G. Jesus Christ.
So you have been with that's interesting.
And I remember Don Jazzy it wasn't Don Jazzy then, he was whatever it was then. He was playing, but I did it. I guess when I finished school, I needed to pay my bills. So I did everything artistic that came my way. I even modeled, I shot some ads for, I mean, wines and etc. I took my journey as it came. I did everything legally, artistically profitable, you know. So, but then the change came when IBST boss, Ogunpiton, yes, IBST Media. I did a project with them, some MTN thing, was stage play, and he said, "You have something, but you know what? You can't come from under. This is a very tough market. Let's find a way to get you in." And I signed a contract. I went to London, did the training. When I went for the training, the people even asked me, they said, "You're already a great presenter. What are you doing here?" I said, "I don't know." So I came back with my London something now, back to the market, and I started applying for jobs. It was also at the time, it was like 2010, the early 2000s. A lot of, I just came back from London where they were plenty in the country. So we with accents that is very Nigerian. Nobody wanted to even hire us. All this, hey, so it was very tough, you know. Presentation was tough, like all this, and God bless those kids. It's not my fault that my this thing did not send me to London to go and acquire accent and brain. I mean, but it became very competitive, and but somehow one thing led to the other. I started doing more presentation, and then I said to myself, I'm actually very smart, and I discovered my interest for news, and I started reporting and writing. And then, did you know that Channels TV was actually my first real journalism job? I know some people would say that it is that your case is different though. You did not hustle in MTV. You did not. I went straight to Channels. And I'm so grateful for John Momo today because he saw the diamond in the rough, you know, and of course I'm not lazy. I love to work, you know. So the more work they gave me, the more I smashed it, the more things got better. I even did Sunrise Daily. Oh. Like I started from the top and I knew I couldn't F up. So I had to rise to the occasion. And I think that's one of the things that I respect about myself. We bring a challenge, we rise up to it, we crack it. And now it's history. I started covering the UN, went to the States, you know, every challenge, every assignment that came, I tried to crack it. And I went from like 60, 70, 80, and he's like, okay, she can be on her own and do her stuff. And then Columbia University happened, and I can go on and on.
Now, I know that you had a conference in where you help young journalists learn the craft. And what other things are you doing, especially for young people who are interested in? Because we need more people covering Africa. I think we all agree and we need more Africans covering Africa instead of having foreigners covering Africa. So, what are you doing along that line?
Okay, so I'm training. Really, I have written a book. You can call it sort of like a training manual. It's currently being edited, so it's going to be a digital book, like the sort of like a training of like 1.5 hour. This sort of the type you see on Udemy. There's also going to be a book on Amazon. It's called Package Like a Pro. What I hear most EPs and most newsrooms say is that we can't find anyone who can do it well the way we want it in Africa. To be honest with you, I have a show now that we have original features every week, like 2 or 3. And it is a tug of war, finding good pitches, good writing, good editing, good everything. And it's not like these people can't do it. It's just that they need tips on how it is done, the acceptable way. Even when I go to international newsroom, this is personal confession. Almost they watched me. Oh. Everything I thought I knew, Igbo, bush. Like I started learning from beginning, and I had to humble myself. It was humbling. So I said to myself, if this is what it is, this is what it would take to get more of our people to tell the story. Then we'll teach them how it is done, how to find great stories, pitch it, and get paid for it. It's actually quite lucrative. Some news organizations pay as like minimum of $1,000 for 2 minutes 30-second story. Some pay more. I don't pay that much.
So how do we get freelancers, young freelancers who what we'll describe as what's it called now? there's what's this word, social media, like there's a word I'm looking for. People, citizen journalists, for example, if there are young journalists who have stories to tell, are they able to pitch to organizations like yours
So
or some other
yeah.
international?
So I'm sorry, Chido. So this is it. What we've seen in my little years of doing this, not little, but like in those since the show started, and we've had to consistently every week find stories, is that people have those talents and it's like bits and pieces just scattered. So you see a VJ who can film very well, but he cannot write story. You see someone who can write, cannot find a good cameraman to film him. You see someone who can write, who understands story, cannot pitch. You see someone who can do live hits and tell you everything that happened in his neighborhood. So live hits and stuff that when there's a breaking news, you find someone in that place to tell us the story. And more international newsrooms they're depending seriously on regional reporters, freelancers, because when a story breaks, it takes time for that international newsroom to send their own correspondent there. Look at when Ukraine happened. How long did it take for people to actually get there before CNN eventually deployed a full team there? They were relying on stringers on the ground. But the reason why they can't put those stringers on air, quote and unquote, is because those people might not know how to do live hits, or they cannot speak English, or maybe they don't know how to write. So they'll be like, we'll send our own people. And it is costing newsrooms more and more. So now they're looking for freelance. It's actually a very lucrative stuff if you know how to do it. And that's why, I mean, hopefully with the help of you guys, we can set up I've like I said, it's written, it's done, it's going to debut, and then the real thing will come from like getting back end support, and then being able to organize seminars in different parts of the world, collaborating with organizations and agencies on the continent so that we can get real time results.
Okay, quickly, before we get to our guests, we have just about 17 minutes. In 2 minutes, can you tell us what the future holds for you? Where do we hope to see Adesewa Josh in 5, 10, 15 years? I'm sure many of your fans who are watching and those who didn't know when you transited from channels to Turkey would love to know. We also know you have an NGO. What's it about, and how can people get quickly in 2 minutes? The audience is waiting.
The time starts now. The same way I couldn't tell where I was going to be 10 years ago. I cannot tell you. But you can trust me that I'll keep striving for my best. I'll keep working. I'll keep the things that drive me is I don't think I want to tell you, but it's obvious. I'm driven and I'm grateful for God's grace. And so I'm going to keep trying. Where I'm going to be, I don't know, but I think I'm going to be sticking around for a long time, God willing, giving me good health and grace and life. I'm
still in the media, or you could branch into something else?
I don't know.
Set up your own international network. But go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know, because I just take it one day at a time. Sometimes I wake up like, who send me message?
Now, what about the non-profit? I wanted you to talk about that a little bit. Your non-profit.
I started it when I was in channels, actually. I covered a story about teenage pregnancy rising, and there was a time it was going up, and it got worse during the pandemic. By the way, people stayed home and they were just getting pregnant up and down. And I know that rich kids have the opportunity to be, to handle it better. So their parents don't want the shame. And so they get them out of the society and take them to London or the US, and somehow their education continues. But if you are a kid from a poor home or middle income, that's the end of your life, basically. And so what that does is it shortcuts most of this very promising kids and etc. So after covering that story, I said, how are we going to have more of Adesewa if this continues to happen? And so I leveraged my contacts in the media at the time, and I reached out. I said, I don't want your money. Don't give us money, because even me, I don't have time to be counting money. I made a list of the things we would need, so that when we do those outreaches, we'll help the kids. So it's called Project Smile Africa, and it's about putting a smile on that young teenage girl. So first started as Project Smile Africa. My first outreach was in police barracks in Lagos. And that came from my father was a policeman. I didn't grow up in the barracks, but and if there's anything I'm grateful for my father for, it's that, because it's an awful place to grow up in Nigeria, barracks, and children don't choose their parents. And when you grow up in that kind of community, just imagine. Have you been to a police barracks before?
No, I've seen the outside and it didn't.
Jesu. And then you have kids. And so we did our first outreach there. I told all my contacts in government. I went to the First Lady of Lagos then, give me 1,000 bags, give me this. I made a list. I created a Facebook page, and amazing people sent us all of these things. And so I told my friends came out, and we gave school bags, school shoes, school everything, so that when they were returning back to school, they went home with a smile. And then I discovered Talk to Your Teens, the pregnancy thing. And we ran a 5-year campaign, just talking to teens, and my ears till tomorrow, the kind of things I hear from young girls. Even before, what is that scandalous story that happened? One school story of people getting pregnant and all started happening. They were telling me of things that were happening under their principal's nose. They were pointing at teachers sleeping with them. So what I do is after the training, the talking to them, I would write my report and send it back to the school. The kids were happy to have a neutral person to talk to. Teens don't talk to their parents. They talk to their friends. I had to make myself available as a friend to do it. And I was doing this with my hectic Channels TV schedule, because it was something I deeply believed in. So that's what it is. And to be honest with you, in the last 3-4 years, I haven't done any major, because I've been out of the country, but I have volunteers on the ground. And part of my dream is to kind of make it a franchise. So we have Project Smile Madagascar, because I met friends from a trip at the White House in 2014 when I was covering. We had been invited, but I forgot that part. There's many stories to tell. Michelle Obama and Barack Obama invited me to the White House along with some other African journalists. It was during the same time he invited a lot of African presidents to the White House. I don't know if you guys remember that. So we were like journalists covering it. So I have this network of African journalists. I shared my vision with them. I was like, you guys are powerful people. You're credible. If you say you're doing this, adopt it and find a problem in your society that you can solve. Leverage your, public figure. People will trust you with their money. And I gave them my own tip. Don't collect money. Make a list of what you want. It will even take the trouble off your neck. No one will say you chop their money. Do you want to wear children's shoe? Do you want to carry children's bag? So, and then film it and send. So it was a very rewarding time for me. And I still find ways to do it here when I can. I haven't done it in 2 years, and it breaks my heart, but I intend to go back.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's bring in our audience. They may want to ask a question or two. I'll bring them in, all of them at the same time. Ovia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Alaro, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Wenga, welcome to the show.
Please bring a lady now.
Well, we can't find any. There is.
This is what I'm talking about.
Probably, yeah. Turn on your camera so that we can bring you on. If your camera is off, okay, she's here. Okay, you got your.
Oh, yay!
All right. So you guys have we have less than 12 minutes to.
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay. So just 30 seconds. Questions only. Yeah, go ahead.
Rudolph and Chido, this is not fair. I have to say it, and I'm very serious now. It is not fair. There are some figures.
We'll charge you for that party promotional ad you are doing.
No,
that subliminal ad you're doing.
There are some figures we don't just ask questions. There is some figure deserve more time to interact with. I'm a fan of news. I consume news, history, politics, and all that. I have never seen a figure that covers so much about us, about our problem, where we are coming from, where we are headed, the way she put it within how many minutes. And kudos to the question you guys asked. When she was talking about Museveni, politically I'm a fan of Museveni. yes, it's bad and all that, but you started saying something about how he was a darling of the Western media when he first started. And talk about how you're meeting him, how you could not even say, this is who is he, this is was, but he's a Pan-Africanist. That covers a lot, because I've read a lot about history and politics. That covers a lot. So we deserve more time to have more conversation. And the way you said you articulated about the problem we are facing in Africa, which is about tribal and all that, that's a lot of things that we actually need to talk about. But my question here is, you talk about how we should tailor our democracy, to our own way of life. And I think you get that from Mr. Museveni too. But my question is that, now I'm narrowing to Nigeria in particular. Do you think an average Nigerian understand our system of democracy, one, and the system of politics we are playing to start with?
All right, thank you very much.
You may no, maybe let's take two. Then you answer the two. Then we take okay. All right. Louis.
Hello.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rudolph. Adesewa, thank you. I've been following you. I'm enjoying your interview. Nigerian will be going for general election in 2023. And currently, we are facing big economic challenges. As at now, we've not been able to meet our OPEC quota. We're being given 2.2 per barrel to be supplying. We are working just below 1.2 now. And the diversification program we are doing is not yielding the necessary research. Just about 3 days ago, the acting accountant general was saying that we are now borrowing to pay salary. So, and there has been a general issue that for this country to be able to get over some of its political and economic challenges, that the country need to be restructured. So I want to know your position. Do you share the view that until this country is being restructured, that we may not be able to get over some of the problem of the economic challenges we are facing?
All right, thank you, Lois. So Adesewa, you can answer the two, then we take the last two.
What is your real name, the new Nigeria?
Ovie, that's
right, Ovie is my name.
Okay, so Ovie, so this is my answer to you, and I'll take it off an answer from a guest that I had on the show 3 weeks ago. You might check her out. I think I posted her on my Twitter feed. See, part of the problem with the average African youth, including Nigerians, is that we don't know how government works. We don't know how government works. And I was hoping that NYSC would sort of, I think that's what NYSC is supposed to be for. We don't know how government works. We don't know, as the average Nigerian does not even know what constitutes the constitution. So we fight from the position from a blind spot. That's why these older elites laugh at us. Because once they listen to how you are arguing, they will say, "Wirelele," because you are not making sense. So they just laugh and look at you and just ignore you. We have to come from a position of strength. Ayachebi was a UN youth AU youth envoy, and she said one of the things, the advice she gives young Africans is, go and do internship in your government. You cannot change what you don't know. I think either our government may not do it, but I think they should be, maybe not too young to run, can push for something like that. Every young graduate, dating back to last 10 years, do 2 years, just knowing what the senators do, what the ministries do, how it happens, where they pass the file from which, because you can't change what you don't know. You have to know it well enough to be able to break the rules. That's what I'm going to tell you. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you, man. You can't change what you don't. That's it. Lewis?
Yeah, Lois.
Thank you so much for following me. And I really do appreciate you. You see, the issue of restructuring was also a topic I've had on my show a couple of times. I had, what's his name now? Cheta Mwanze You might know him, of SBM Intelligence.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said about, I don't think restructuring is a, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the idea of having regional governments take care of their problems, right?
Well, there are those who push for that, but it's not necessarily that.
So, first of all, we need to agree. When I listen to people's arguments, it is not, our arguments are not coherent. They're like all over the place. Let's first define what should restructuring look like in Nigeria's situation. Again, tailor the problem. Some people are saying let regional governments take care of their finances and lead it. Some people are saying no, let's just. What do you guys want? Part of the problem, we've said it before, is the incoherence of our ideas. And again, with all due respect, and I know Obama will hate me for, I love the Obamas. When you have systems like our own that has been destabilized by colonialism for a very long time, and we have all this ethnic blah 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 working against each other, you just need one person who say this is where we are going, and that person must have the interest of the rest of the people at heart until we are all able to live together as one. My favorite human leader in the world is Lee Kuan Yew. Singapore became independent almost about the same time as us, and they are multi-ethnic, maybe like us, okay? But you see, when Lee Kuan Yew started to run that country and build, I think the word is build the country, the West called him, what was it they called him? Dictator. The guy he was minding his business and drinking his water. Developed the country, literacy rate went up, blah, blah, blah went up. He was conducting elections till the society became so homogeneous that when it was time, the system corrected itself and they voted for somebody else. He stepped down, whatever. Let us first decide what kind of restructuring do we want. It is the lack of coherence that is the problem. That's what I'm going to say, because Niger, my Niger.
Thank you. Let's go to Gwenga. 30 seconds. We have less than 4 minutes left. 30 seconds for your question, and then we'll go ahead. I'll come to you, proudly, Beer. Gwenga.
Thank you very much for putting this wonderful Adesewa. I'm a big fan. I actually just discovered you today. I'm a journalist myself. I work for News Central TV, and I focus mainly on Africa. My question to you is this. I'm a Pan-Africanist. I love the Lumumba of this world, Sankara and Mandela. And we all talk about African integration on paper. And it's so sad that it's easier for Europeans to move around Africa easily than fellow Africans. So African unity is just, we go to OAU summits, it's Kumbaya. The African Continental Free Trade Area was signed about 2 years ago. And, it was touted as a billion people single economic zone in the model of the European Union. But we've not seen anything yet. So my question to you is this. Will that be the panacea for African integration? And do you see it? Because people, they're still operating blocks. The DRC just joined the East African Economic Bloc. Have every side. Yeah, so will after be that that policy that would truly integrate Africa in terms of free movement of goods and people? That's
all right. Thank you.
Let me quickly answer it.
Okay.
I'll do it in hopefully 1 minute. See, after is a great idea. It should have happened monkey years ago. If it happens, implementation is not going to be easy. When it's going to be easy, you were setting up too. It wasn't easy. They fought each other's throats and blah 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 blah. So I don't think it's fair to expect after to take shape even in 10 years. But I think where the danger would be is to not be realistic at all about what it will take. So we need to have a list, bullet point, okay, and say in the next 20 years, the first year of ACTA, this is what we're going to achieve. The second year of ACTA, have a timeline to be able to achieve this. A good way to solve this, our problem of not being able to move around the continent very well, at least for international journalists, is for the AU to set up a database for us. have a name. So like I called it the black passport, the black journalist passport. In fact, I want to take this argument to the floor of the AU, inshallah, one time, so that we can argue it. Once they have, do you know what I mean?
I just came back from Malawi a few weeks ago.
Say that again. Sorry.
Apply for a visa to go to Malawi. Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I just came back from Malawi a few weeks ago, and I needed a visa. Yeah.
All right. Proudly Bear, go on and ask your question. We're out of time, essentially.
Hello, Adesewa. Really nice to meet you. I'm really happy to have you here. And as a woman, I'm so proud of you because I champion women wherever I go. My question for you, as a journalist who has traveled large with great experiences traveling around Africa and the rest of the world at large, today, do you think that there is hope for a young Nigerian woman, both in politics and other important positions that are credible to make huge positive differences or even minute differences in the society, starting from home, say in Nigeria? And secondly, what advice do you have for our young Nigerians? They say charity begins at home, say from Nigeria, then we have great Nigerians, then we can become great Africans. What advice do you have for an African young girl who has a dream? We say people would want to empower a young girl, but there are young girls that already got those fires in their bellies. But they say you have to heaven help those that help themselves. So those people that really want to, what are you going to tell them to start? They should help themselves. There shouldn't be excuses that I can't go to uni. I know that money is important, but there are people that are orphans that actually made something out of their lives. There are people in potholes that became somebody. What are you going to say to them to empower them that, look, you have to help yourself first and put yourself in the position of limelight where you will get that desire possibly? Thank you.
Okay, so there's a weird sound coming.
Yeah, sorry. Let me figure out who has this.
So thank you so much.
Hold on. Okay. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so proudly, what's your name again? Proudly Blah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for that question. And I get this all the time. So I'm going to break my answer down, hopefully, into 3 stages. Zero it down at Nigeria. Nigeria has become a very dysfunctional society now. And every day I am afraid for the average girl who sincerely wants to make it, because everything is upside down. People are not telling the truth of how they're climbing up the ladder. And social media, they look at social media, you're even more confused. And last time I saw hair for 1.5 million, and babes about say, you can buy land in Agbo with that thing somewhere in the village. But that's how my mother raised me, okay? So it's become very twisted and all. I think it takes the great to perceive the great. From my experience, my father died in 2004, and everything, when a man dies in a home, everything just dabaroos like that. So one of the things I did was I started looking for mentors outside of my home. I decided to take the burden away from my mom. I started looking for men. I prayed, of course, so that I don't enter into the lion's den. That was the first thing I did. So I sort of gravitated towards people with similar values as me. And yes, there is a huge God factor in my life, still is, but I was also able to follow people who were following the things that I love to follow. Number 2 is there was a time in my life that the people who supported me the most are men. There are reasons for that. Our society is still very patriarchal a lot. It is, if a woman has money, she's probably getting it from her husband, right? There's a new generation now that there are women who actually have their own money. I think such women need to gather together and help young girls who are truly talented. Now they do ourselves, so now we. So And there were men who made it a franchise, commercialized that. So before they help you, I've been told before, like, the fact that you're talented and you're this, so what? How is that benefiting me? Exchange. I said, Jesus. Because I was marketing myself. I'm very smart. You're going to, like, you know, you'll be proud of me. Do the thing where they ask you. So the challenge of the society is that because it is still, money is still in the hands of a lot of men, many young girls will still gravitate towards those people who would give them money to actually, so they're actually really good girls who have gotten involved in like crazy stuff just so they can see themselves through school, and hopefully they would dump it and they would be like, that's past in my life. Women need to start opening doors for each other. Personally, what I've been doing in my career, I mean, and the truth is, yes, I do get paranoid because there's some nasty girls that all they want to do is kick your ass and take your job. Well, okay. My own is I support, like, I open a door, I kick it down for other women to follow. I created a show. If I don't do this show tomorrow, it will be another black girl. It will make sense. They're going to put Muzungu to go and be presenting Africa Matters. I have planted a tree that many birds, when I am not there, will continue. And that will follow me and my children. We need to, no matter what, open the door for other women. So if we build a network of support for actually young girls going to school, so that we can reduce the pressure that comes when those girls approach a man, they feel like, please give us money. And, you know, those men, some bad men want to, like, you know, change it around and say, give me your bum first and then take the money. Then last but not the least, we should, after getting, the second one is to build a network of like a support system, women support system. You know, now I have more women supporting me. I mean, this phase of my life has been wonderful women just supporting me. And it tells me that things are changing. Okay. So in your own little way, who's that young girl struggling, who is truly talented, not the one who feels entitled and is not doing anything? And my friend, if I slap you, but I can tell the one that is like, you can tell they're working very hard, and give them your support. Give them your support. That's what you can do. So when we create this network, we can see more women entering the door that you have opened. And before you know it, we push each other up. And like, it is not a war between men and women. No, it's just that we're reclaiming what you used to have. And please take away that notion that African women were, what was it? It was when the colonialists came. We've heard of Warrior Aisha. Our society was not a society of oppressed women. Women were doing their thing. Still go to the markets tomorrow. Women are the ones running things. Not because they are oppressed. It's because that's what we did. Whoever wants to be warrior will do warrior. Want to run a kingdom, you run kingdom. If you want to run the home, you run the home. It was when the Europeans came that they needed men to go to war. They needed the women to stay at home and raise the kids and bear more men, so that when those kids grow up, they will pick cotton and go and fight. There are still cultures in Nigeria today that you don't mess with their women. So what are we talking about? Please, my American accent has disappeared. So that's
wonderful.
Thank you so much, Adesewa. It's been a pleasure.
We need a session of conversation with her, like hours. She has experienced a lot. So
we'll do more of this. We're out of time. Thank you so much, Adesewa. Thank you for being part of this. The guests. We hope we really appreciate you. We appreciate the work you do. We're proud of your reportage and your coverage, and we hope we'll bring you back sometime to provide more insight into what you do. Thank you to the audience for all those who have participated in the program. We look forward to seeing you same time next week on a different topic with a different guest. Do follow us on our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, on 90 Minutes Africa and Dr. Damages. And thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Join my party, I beg.
All right, so nice